Assertion: the Big Five is king in personality psychology. Introduction. There are many ways to approach personality psychology. One way is to enter the realm of party games and horoscopes. For such people, there is the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Indicator. For scientifically minded folks, the Big Five factor model of personality is the gold standard. Finally, for open-minded, holistic thinkers, there appears to be much promise in an attempted reconciliation between the Western approach to personality psychology and the older Indian system of Ayurveda. The Big Five factor model of personality has its roots firmly embedded in the modern scientific tradition. From its inception, it has been grounded in statistics and lexical factor analysis. Lexical factor analysis is a statistical method used in personality psychology to identify fundamental traits by analyzing patterns in language, particularly adjectives people use to describe themselves and others. It is based on the lexical hypothesis, which suggests that important personality traits are embedded in natural language. On the other end of the spectrum, the creators and purveyors of the Myers-Briggs type indicator have consistently fled scientific verification, standardization, and rigor. The ideas underlying the MBTI are often ambitious extrapolations from Carl Jung's unscientific 1921 work, Psychological Types. It can properly be called a scandal that the MBTI has become as popular as it has. Despite its widespread use in workplaces and personal development, the MBTI lacks strong scientific validity, with research showing poor reliability and weak predictive power for behavior or job performance. Its continued success is often attributed more to effective marketing and the appeal of simplistic, flattering personality categories than to solid psychological evidence. Thesis: the Big Five factor model of personality is currently the best and most scientifically rigorous approach to personality in psychological science. Confirmatio. In a 2009 study, Fleeson and Gallagher reviewed 15 studies of personality psychology research, each of which sought to test the efficacy and validity of the Big Five. To provide context, much of the previous research on the subject has suggested that, while the Big Five personality traits, conscientiousness, agreeableness, intellect, which is sometimes called openness, and has since been parsed into intellect and openness as separate aspects of the same trait, neuroticism and extroversion, were verifiable psychological traits. It was an open question to what degree these traits actually affect individual behavior across time. According to Fleeson and Gallagher, it is often difficult to extrapolate from the results of one or more studies such that Big Five personality traits can be shown to have strong, long-term effects on behavior. They list two reasons for this. For one, it is not always easy to decide what behaviors count as manifestations of, say, extroversion, or to exhaustively compile all such behaviors. Secondly, it is similarly challenging to record enough of a person's behavior so that one obtains an accurate picture of an individual's personality, complete with a nicely packaged bell curve distribution depicting their average behaviors with perfect standard deviations. In order to counter these difficulties, Fleeson and Gallagher prefer a method called personality state assessment to be administered, in which participants record their behavior multiple times per day, every few hours, for a number of weeks. Then, participants' behaviors can be assessed in respect to their alignment with the already established traits. This way, participants' behavior is recorded very soon after it actually occurs, not long afterwards, and future behaviors are predicted based on trait standing. Near the beginning of each of the 15 studies, participants took a Big Five personality trait test, not simply on previous behavior. Part of the beauty of Fleeson and Gallagher's study is that it was a meta-analysis, which differs from a meta-analysis in that the authors had access to all the original data from the 15 studies. Consequently, Fleeson and Gallagher were able to combine all data sets into one file for analysis. Scores on questionnaires that used different scales were reconciled using a POMP, percent of maximum possible score method, so that all scores could be compared apples to apples. Also, differences within individuals and between individuals were partitioned. The results of correlational analysis between the means of individuals' actual behavior across time and their previously self-reported Big Five personality scores were striking and unexpected, given the field's previous doubt about the predictive power of Big Five traits on actual behavior. Statistically speaking, all correlations exceeded 0.4, and one reached as high as 0.56. In the social sciences, such correlations are very significant. This meta-analysis provides solid confirmation of the reliability, validity, scientific rigor, and strength of the Big Five personality model. Another 2009 study, alluded to above, beautifully illustrates the power of the Big Five, and more broadly the power of scientific methods to zero in on precise truths. In it, de Jong et al. Used functional MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, to differentiate two subcomponents, here called intellect and openness, of one of the Big Five traits, sometimes called openness to experience. Previous research had already accomplished this differentiation, but in this study, specific anatomical regions of the brain were discovered to be more associated with one aspect. In particular, the posterior medial frontal cortex correlated with intellect, here partially defined as interest in and motivation to pursue ideas, even after controlling for general cognitive ability and working memory. This seems to suggest that the posterior medial frontal cortex may drive intellectual engagement and interest over and beyond this region's contribution to intelligence per se. A third study from 2020 further depicts the Big Five's supremacy in terms of scientific rigor. In it, various theories, including lifespan developmental theory, neo-socioanalytic theory, self-regulation theory, and selection, optimization, and compensation theory were effectively reconciled. The key focus of this meta-analysis, which reviewed 16 longitudinal studies with over 60,000 total participants, was the question of personality change over the lifespan. First, the opposite ideas that personality after a certain age is fixed, or that personality is a constant flux, were both dismissed. Second, it was acknowledged that personality does change throughout the lifespan, and that these changes are predictable to a degree. Third, analysis was conducted to determine influencing factors on the rate of change, as well as who demographically might be likely to change, and along what dimensions. Lifespan developmental theory helped to explain individual level changes observed, while neo-socioanalytic theory and selection, optimization, and compensation theory helped to explain population level changes observed, and self-regulation theory contributed to understanding both levels of changes observed. This meta-analysis found that, at least at the population level, as people enter older adulthood, their levels of conscientiousness, extroversion, and openness decline. Their agreeableness remains relatively stable, and their neuroticism increases. These three studies powerfully demonstrate the scientific validity, adaptability, and rigor of the Big Five factor model. Refutatio. On the other hand, we have the most popular personality test in the world, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. In an interview with Charles Blue of the Association for Psychological Science, Dan McAdams, professor of psychology at Northwestern University, briefly and powerfully articulates why the Myers-Briggs is, in his phrasing, bogus. McAdams overviews the origin story of the Myers-Briggs, which begins with the brilliant mind of Carl Jung, specifically in his 1921 work, Psychological Types. Catherine Brigg read Jung's book, and eventually, with the help of her daughter Isabel Myers, developed the prototype of the popular personality test. When Isabel Myers brought the test to the Educational Testing Service, she received criticism from its scientists, who requested that her work be subjected to scientific standards. Myers refused and took the test to the consulting psychologist press, which had less scruples about the endeavor. Consequently, the test became increasingly popular in corporate and academic America, even though it had no scientific validity whatsoever. According to McAdams, the Myers-Briggs test measures 4 personality traits, but unfortunately, 3 of these have no verifiable reality outside of the test itself. The only trait measured, which does have psychological reality, is introversion-extroversion. Even this is measured incorrectly, as it lumps individuals into one side or the other of a false binary. One is either an extrovert or an introvert. This contrasts with the scientifically derived practice of the Big Five personality model, which recognizes extroversion-introversion as a broad continuum. This is not to suggest that the Big Five model is the only approach to personality psychology that has any scientific validity. Although it is presently the best personality model extant, there are other approaches to personality psychology which may be validly granted consideration. For example, the ancient Indian system of philosophy known as Ayurveda has in recent years received positive attention from the scientific community. A 2011 paper provides a theoretical framework for understanding how an integration of Ayurvedic philosophy and modern personality psychology might be accomplished. A 2010 paper uses this general approach to describe how the time-tested Indian empirical paradigm might be practically translated into modern biological science such that it can be seen that both systems may benefit. Although Ayurveda did not originate within the confines of modern scientific practice, its methodology is undeniably empirical, as its millennia of trial and error attest to. One promising and striking discovery in this attempt at reconciliation is that Ayurveda's 3 doshas, a term applied as a pattern description of individuals, animals, and some elements of inanimate materia, seem to dovetail perfectly with 3 fundamental biological functions of organisms. The Vata dosha is equated with homeostasis, the Pitta dosha with negative entropy production, and the Kapha dosha with storage. Conclusion. It should be clear from the above studies and sources that the MBTI does not hold a candle to the Big Five in terms of scientific rigor. It does lead one to wonder, however, at the motives of those profiteering from hawking low-quality merchandise to the public. It smells of snake oil, and to the degree that it costs real money to purchase such tests and related analyses, one wonders whether the feelings of individuality or group belonging the test fosters are worth the cost. It is the opinion of the author that such amusements should not be intentionally conflated with the real thing, that is, the painstaking and priceless products of those who can be called real scientists. Beware of those who muddy the waters. Beware especially of those who have something to gain from false claims to scientific credibility. Flee such parasites who make their living and a killing off of undeserved reputations.